Welcome to the 2026 National Vietnam Veterans Observance. This is a day we say thank you and welcome home to those who served in Vietnam, and a day to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. I'm Captain Barry Schwer, United States Navy, retired, a naval aviator, Vietnam veteran, member of VFW Post 1177, and president of the Sergeant Major John Champ Chapter Sons of the American Revolution. I'm very pleased to announce and acknowledge our partners for this event, VFW Post 1177 and the Leonard W. Kidd Memorial American Legion Post 2001. Please rise, please, for the invocation, presentation of colors, Pledge of Allegiance, and National Anthem. I ask Sergeant Major John Champ Chaplain Jim Watts to bring the invocation.
Holy God, who created humankind to live in community, we pause this day to give thanks for men and women who have served our nation to preserve its way of life. We give thanks for veterans who answered the call to serve in time of peace and in time of war. Grant peace of mind to veterans who encountered the horrors of war and allow them to move forward with their lives. May all veterans experience the gratitude of the citizens whose lives are enriched because of the freedoms preserved by these brave men and women. Grant them your peace. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. The colors are in place because of the wind. We're not going to advance them. I ask Warner Workman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Warner. I ask Army veteran Anita Bonner to lead us in the National Anthem.
All right, in just a second, I'm going to take this microphone down. Please join me in the National Anthem.
Thank you, Anita. I'd like to take this, please be seated. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce some of the folks that have honored us here today. I'd like to welcome Phyllis Randall, Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, Chair at Large. And Mrs. Randall, if you'd like to bring greetings, please do so.
Thank you, thank you. I'm always really careful about bringing greetings at these moments because I never bring them as Phyllis Randall. I bring them as the daughter of Master Sergeant Sidney Arnold, who served 2 tours of combat duty in Vietnam. And when I'm Chair Randall, I'm very composed. When I'm Master Sergeant Arnold's daughter, I'm a lot less composed. I also sometimes get frustrated that We say and we should say thank you to veterans, but if we really want to thank veterans, we should make sure we have services for when they come home and for their families. We should make sure we have services for people who come home with PTSD or a drug addiction and for their families. We should make sure that if their kids want to go to college, they can go at a lower, no price at all. If we really want to thank veterans, we should figure out how to take care of their families who serve with them and do that every day. So as the daughter of a Vietnam veteran and as the wife of a Air Force nuclear weapons technician, I want to say thank you for all of you being here, but at this moment, I'm just simply not Chair Randall. I am Daddy's daughter, and I thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am. And we're honored today to have the President of the Virginia Society Sons of the American Revolution here, Kenneth. President Smith, you're invited to bring greetings if you wish.
Just a tad windy today. My name's Darren Schmidt. I am the president of the Virginia Society Sons of the American Revolution, and on behalf of the Society, it's an honor to bring greetings on this National Vietnam Veterans Day as we gather to recognize and thank those who served during a challenging and often difficult chapter in our nation's history. Today we honor the men and women who answered their country's call, those who served with courage, endured hardship, and carried out their duty with honor. We also pause to remember those who did not return, whose sacrifice reminds us that the cost of liberty is neither abstract nor distant, but deeply personal and enduring. As members of the Sons of the American Revolution, we're entrusted with preserving the memory of those who secured our independence in the 18th century. Yet that responsibility does not end there. The principles for which our patriot ancestors fought, liberty, self-government, and the defense of our nation, have required the continued service of generations of Americans. The Vietnam veterans we honor today are part of that unbroken line of service. Though separated by time and circumstance, their commitment reflects the same enduring ideals that inspired the cause of independence. They stood in defense of those principles, often under conditions of uncertainty and at times without the recognition that they deserved upon their return. One of the core tenets of our society is education, ensuring that future generations understand not only the events of our past, but the people who shaped them. It's our duty to ensure that the story of the Vietnam veterans is told fully and faithfully. Their service, their sacrifice, and their perseverance. Equally, we are called to patriotism, not only in word, but in action. Patriotism is expressed in how we honor those who served, how we care for them after their service, and how we remember those who gave their lives in defense of our nation. To the veterans here today, your service matters. Your sacrifice is recognized. Your place in the continuing story of our republic is secure. On behalf of the Virginia Society Sons of the American Revolution, thank you for your service, your dedication, and your example. May we always remember, may we always honor, and may we always strive to be worthy of the legacy that you have helped to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we're also honored to have the Sheriff of Loudoun County, Mike Chapman.
Thank you. I'm just here to honor the service and sacrifice of the people that served in that war and continue to serve in the military. I have 5 children that served or are currently serving in the U.S. military, and I'm very proud of them, and I'm proud of the sacrifice that they make as well. This war, I was just entering my teenage years when the Vietnam War was in full swing. And we had a next door neighbor who was a naval flight officer who was deployed in Vietnam, and I just remember his helicopter going down, and he perished in that. And I just remember the impact on our neighborhood, how it was felt, because we had a very tight neighborhood, and it was really sad, very sad to hear. And you know, he was just such a great person, and the neighborhood was so connected, and it was just so sad to see that happen. So I do appreciate it. It was very real for us in that neighborhood, but I do appreciate all the sacrifice that so many people made to get through that awful war, and I appreciate everybody being out here in this very, very important ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we're also honored to have the mayor of Leesburg, Kelly Burke. Madam Mayor, if you'd like to make remarks.
Sure. Thank you. Really. Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. And Phyllis, as a daughter of a Navy vet and the wife of a Army vet and the sister of a Marine vet and aunt to Air Force and Coast Guard vets, I share your enthusiasm for recognizing our veterans and the things that we should be doing for them. So thank you for what you do. Thank you very much for all that you do to help us remember. It is very important that we don't forget these people and the sacrifices they make. But I can't help but notice that we are located on the hallowed ground of the county, but you are surrounded by Leesburg. And so I'm so glad that we can work together and have these memorials and these remembrances. It's very important, and I really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today is a day to honor the men and women who served our country during a very unpopular war. The Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 was signed into law by U.S. President Donald J. Trump, designating every March 29th as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. A day to honor Vietnam veterans, 29 March, was chosen to be observed in perpetuity because that day, the United States Military Assistance Command Vietnam, MACV, was disestablished and was also the day the last combat troops departed Vietnam. In addition, on and around the same day, Hanoi released the last of its acknowledged prisoners of war. This day honors all veterans and their families who served on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces at any time from November 1st, 1955 to May 15th, 1975, regardless of location. Starting in 1968, military personnel returning from the Vietnam theater of operations were rarely given any positive acknowledgement. Frequently they became the target of scorn and abuse. This day is set aside, so we say emphatically, welcome home and thank you for your service. I want to bring attention to the POW MI flag that's right over in the corner of the building and the missing man table. The missing man table is against the courthouse wall. The flag honors all POWs and MIAs from all wars fought by the United States. Across all of those wars, it is estimated that over 80,000 veterans remain missing. The missing man table is a solemn way to honor each of the veterans who are missing. Each piece of the assembly has solemn meaning. The table is round to show our everlasting concern for missing comrades. The white tablecloth symbolizes the purity of their hopes when answering the call to serve. The single red rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the lives of these Americans and their loved ones and friends who keep faith while seeking answers. The red ribbon symbolizes our continued determination to account for the missing. A lemon reminds us of their bitter fate, captured or missing in a foreign land. Salt symbolizes the tears of our missing and their families who long for answers after decades of uncertainty. The candle reflects our hope for their return, alive or dead. The Bible represents pain through faith to sustain us, and those lost for our country founded as one nation under God. And the inverted glass symbolizing their inability to share a toast. And the chair is empty, the seat that remains unclaimed at the table. According to the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, 1,566 Vietnam War veterans remain unaccounted for. It's the ongoing job of that agency to repatriate the remains of POWs and MIAs. In 2025, they returned 165 World War II vets, 58 Korean War vets, and 8 Vietnam vets. Please join me in a moment of silence for those who remain missing. Thank you. Richard Ryan is a member of the Leonard W. Kidd Memorial American Legion Chapter, or Post 2001, and a compatriot of Sergeant Major John Champ Chapter, Virginia SAR. He will now present a short history of the Vietnam War, and following that history, he will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Barry. Good afternoon, everyone. What a wonderful Palm Sunday to have a ceremony here in Leesburg at the courthouse. Before I begin, I just want to share an anecdotal note. Barry and I coordinated on this program, and the last version I saw, I believe I saw 2 errors that needed to be corrected. If you would turn your program over to the national anthem, which we just read, I'll point out to you an anomaly that I never knew before. There were 4 verses written for the national anthem, and we have the first one. At the end of 2 lines, there is a question mark. I assumed that was a punctuation error. It is not. Francis Scott Key intentionally left the question mark there because those lines were in doubt whether they were true. And it's remained that way ever since, for historical accuracy. Our involvement started after World War II. Via significant financial and logistic support and some U.S. military to aid the French in their war against Communist Viet Minh. President Harry Truman declared his doctrine of containment of communism in 1947 at the start of the Cold War. The defeat of the French at Dien Bien Phu, May 7, 1954, basically ended the First Indochina War, which left communist North Vietnam in control of the country's northern half. Increasing numbers of U.S. military advisors began assisting the non-communist government of South Vietnam. From 1957 on, insurgents known as the Viet Cong launched a campaign against the state. North Vietnam supported the Viet Cong, which began fighting the South Vietnamese army. President John F. Kennedy, who subscribed to the domino theory that communism would spread to other countries if Vietnam fell, in 1961, American military advisors began directly working with the South Vietnamese, which began a slow increase in involvement and hostile engagements over the next several years. During this time, expanded U.S. aid to South Vietnam resulted in increasing numbers of advisors from 900 to 16,300, but this failed to produce the desired results. February 8, 1962, MACV was replaced by the Military Assistant Command Vietnam, referred to as MACV. Events were moving fast the following year. In 1963, the Republic of Vietnam elected President Diem, who was deposed and killed in a military coup. And North Vietnam began sending elements of its own army south, armed with Soviet and Chinese weapons, to assist the Viet Cong in the south. 1 year later, the Gulf of Tonkin incident occurred in 1964, where 3 North Vietnamese PT boats fired on the USS Maddox. President Lyndon Johnson ordered airstrikes against North Vietnam, and Congress passed the Tonkin Bill, which authorized military intervention in defense of South Vietnam and our forces. From 1965, U.S. involvement in Vietnam escalated rapidly as President Johnson launched Operation Rolling Thunder against targets in North Vietnam and ordering 3,500 Marines to the region. It became clear that aerial strikes alone would not win the war, so ground troops had to be significantly increased. In 1968, North Vietnam and the Viet Cong launched the Tet Offensive, massive attacks throughout South Vietnam, after which General Westmoreland estimated another 200,000 troops were needed for victory. President Johnson rejected his request, announced he would not seek another term in office, and ordered an end to Rolling Thunder. The U.S. military presence in Vietnam peaked in April of 1969 with 540,000 military personnel stationed in the country. 543,000. as opposition to the war was dramatically escalating at home, as it had become the first TV-covered war with near real-time reporting every day. President Johnson's successor, Richard Nixon, promulgated the Nixon Doctrine, which was a policy of Vietnamization, training the South Vietnamese army so it could defend the country, and started a phased withdrawal of American troops. By 1972, there were only 69,000 troops in Vietnam, down from the peak of 543,000 just years before. And in 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, and the last combat troops, as you heard, departed on 29 March 1973. April 30th, 1975, the capital of South Vietnam, Saigon, fell to the North Vietnamese Army, and all of Vietnam became one, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, which remains to this day. By the end of the U.S. involvement, more than 3.1 million Americans had been stationed in Vietnam, and 58,279 had been killed. I would like now to introduce our guest speaker, who drove up from Fredericksburg to share his story with us. Captain Kenneth Dutch Rauch, United States Navy retired. Dutch was born in Syracuse, New York, spent his early years on a farm. Sounds familiar to some of you around here from our history. He was selected for the U.S. Naval Academy and graduated in 1966, where he taught math and physics while awaiting the start of his flight training. In training, he flew the T-34, T-2B, NC, F-9, F-11, received his Naval Aviator Wings of Gold in December of 1967. Back then, they didn't waste much time getting pilots through the program, and it became a most interesting career of flying and unique assignments, which I'm going to quickly cover. In 1967, he learned to fly the A-4 Hawk with replacement aircrew VA-125 in Lemoore, California. 1968-69, assigned to VA-23 flying A-4s, embarked in the USS Ticonderoga, CV-14, and USS Oriskany, CV-34, in combat operations in Vietnam. 1970, he was an Empire test pilot in Boscombe Town, Wilt, United Kingdom. 1971 to 74, he was an experimental test pilot at the Naval Air Test Center in Patuxent River, Maryland. 1974 to 77, he was flying A-7 Corsair, VA-27, embarked on the USS Enterprise, CVN-65. And uniquely enough, 29 to 30 April 1975, he participated in Operation Frequent Wind, which was the evacuation of South Vietnam, and he got the last arrested landing of the carrier operations in the Gulf. 1977 to 81, he was a tutor at the Canadian Forces College in Toronto, Canada. 1981 to 83, aircraft handling officer on the USS Midway, CV-41 in Yokosuka, Japan. 1983, fighter weapons school, Top Gun, NAS Miramar. I think you all learned about Top Gun. 1983-86, executive officer, commanding officer of VC-5 at NAS Cupid Point in the Philippines, where they were flying A-4s and H-3s. 1986-88, Air Department head, which we call an air boss, on the USS Kitty Hawk, CV-63. 1988 to 1989, classified programs in OpNav. I tried to squeeze it out of him, and still to this day, he said, I can't tell you that. 1989 to 1991, executive assistant, OPO-5, director Naval Air in the OpNav Pentagon. 1991 to 93, commander training wing 2, they taught to fly the T-2 NAS Kingsville. 1993, retired from the United States Navy, but then came back to fly as an experimental test pilot at Naval Air Systems Command at Pax River. In 2002, he retired and moved aboard a sailboat and sailed the islands. Pretty nice life. During his career, he was awarded numerous decorations. And I would mention, when he first sent me his bio, he didn't mention one. I had to ask him. He's received the Legion of Merit twice, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal 6 times, Navy Commendation with Combat D 3 times. And would you please join me in welcoming Navy Captain Dutch Rauch, retired, who will share his remarks.
I'm honored, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you. To my fellow Vietnam veterans, I say welcome home. I was asked to speak about my experiences in Vietnam. First of all, my overall experiences is a shame, a national shame, that it took an act of Congress to correct multiple Congresses and administrations who in the moment sent us to fight and then failed to support us, even with the public. They actually did things that increased the risk to us and did us harm. So how did I get there? What was my path to Vietnam? I come from a modest family in northern New York State. 1960, while I was in high school, I enlisted in the reserves. I needed to secure income and start a career. I did quite well when I was in high school, so the command chief was on me constantly to apply for advanced training or school. After 2 years, I finally read a message on the old hands read board about application to the Naval Academy. So okay, that's an advanced school, so I signed the papers, put it on his desk, and figured to shut him up. To my surprise, I received orders to plebe year at the Naval Academy following month with a class of 66. At the Naval Academy, as you would expect, the news of the war was followed closely. That brought me to a commitment to be part of it as a pilot, which I volunteered for. I began flight training in 67, January, and then got my wings in 67, sorry. Upon completion, we had our choice of grades, or depending on grades, we had a choice of airplane to fly. I chose the workhorse of the Vietnam, the single-seat A4 Skyhawk. A4 is a dive bomber in classic sense, just like World War II. In the Navy, we were called attack pilots. Today, in the Air Force, they call it fighter pilots. The RAG type training aircraft to the A4 was pretty uneventful, except for most of the instructors were Vietnam vets. So we were filled with all kinds of stories of the scooter in combat. I joined my squadron 23, as Rich told you, after the RAG. We did very well in pre-deployment training, and we embarked on the ship soon after. We're all puffed up, cocky, and ready to go to combat. I stopped to mention something. The target lists were actually not generated by folks in Vietnam, but by people in Washington, bureaucrats in uniform, or in suits rather, politicians in suits, and politicians in uniform. They were approved by the president and leaked by Henry Kissinger to the North Vietnamese. No, those are good. The target list were the worst possible, considering the situation in the South, or in the whole of the world didn't recognize any of the facts on the ground. Our targets were mainly hitting targets that were supply people and military installations. But there were Russian, French, and British ships that were in the ports in North Vietnam that were unloading military supplies. They had SAM sites and gun emplacements alongside the ships. We weren't allowed to hit them. In fact, we were prohibited from hitting them. The North Vietnamese like to put the SAM sites and gun emplacements alongside schools and hospitals and things like that, so that we couldn't hit them either. So they're shooting at us, but we couldn't get back at them. Their operations officer of the squadron, Bill Gilchrist, took me as his wingman on my first day of combat. He was on his third deployment. So I figured we'd be bulletproof. On my first flight over the target, as I hung in tight, we did 3 SAM breaks, where you maneuver and fly into the SAM to avoid it. As I accomplished that, I was diving on my target, and I let go of my bombs. I watched black flak bursts flying all around me. And then the golf balls were flying past me as tracers for more flak. During the mission, Lieutenant Commander Gilchrist was by far more calm than me. I lost a lot of memory in the haze of the anxiety we shot at so much. I soon gathered my wits, and the rest of my missions were much better for remembering details, until the day I watched an A4 from our sister squadron get hit by AAA. It blew up. The pilot didn't eject. That's something that recalibrated my thought process a lot. After a while, we were adding missions for close air support along the Ho Chi Minh Trail to do supply interdiction. We're still getting rudder from Washington. Washington decided that a bombing haul would be advantageous to the peace talks that were in Europe or in Paris. So we were limited to targets below the GMZ, which is 17th parallel. And then with some targets south of the 19th parallel were added later. Working the trail and yes, we did in Laos. We did bomb Laos, and we did bomb some in Cambodia. We were there. Most of the time we worked with FACS, the Forward Air Force Forward Air Controllers, and CIA FACS. Bombing the north was hazardous in the extreme. Ho Chi Minh Trail in the south, not so much, but it had its issues. Night ops in the night in the jungle, over the jungle and over sea, or about as big as I think you could imagine. Targets were usually Hong Kong, moving supplies on the trail, or parking areas for trucks loaded with supplies. We'd often join with an A3 Sky Warrior, all lights out, 200 feet above the treetops, and just flying along in formation on this guy. They were listening to acoustic devices that had been dropped on the trail. So when they get a hit on the acoustic device, they drop a log, which is an incendiary device, to mark the target, and we'd roll in on them. As I said, it was very hazardous from the standpoint of flying at night. 2 guys from the sister squadron, Ken Sanger and Bill Franson, had a mid-air one night. And we found out later they both thought they'd been shot down. One of them was stripped of all of his flight gear when he ejected. The other one kept it. It was all properly secured. And when they didn't get him, the line to the guy with the radio went over the pilot that got stripped of his gear. You can imagine that when the helo it picked them up, the looks on their faces were rather startling. Thinking they'd both been shot down and they were both in the helo. one night my roommate, Stan Smiley, went down an interdiction mission up on the trail. And he's working a truck, hit the ground, we don't know why. Either shot down or just got disoriented and hit the ground. That was a very possible thing. But then 20 years later, I'm in the Pentagon, and a man walks up to me unannounced, and he has a photograph. Can I please look at the photograph? And I, sure. So I looked at it. There's 3 guys in it. One of them is Stan Smiley, POW. The other, they looked like rather haggard, a little older, and they were guys that were supposedly Aleos. I don't know. The guy didn't identify himself. I don't know who it was finally. After the bombing halt kept us below the DMZ, sometimes we were allowed to get in targets that were below the 19 parallel per VIN. There was this PG school for gunners. So one exception was that I had to fly a photo recon for an F-8 that was flying to do a recon of the rail yard in Finn. I got badly mauled by gunfire. That got me a Purple Heart, which attack pilots didn't like to have. Luckily, I didn't have to check, and I got back to the ship for an eventful landing. I broke my back in the landing. It was so today is where I told you March 29th, which was Vietnam War Veterans Day, because on the 29th the MACV was disbanded, and that forgot some of us who were participating in Operation Frequent Wind 2 years later. 29th and 30th of April, 1975. It's one of the saddest days of my memory. Thousands of refugees were fleeing down the Mekong River, coming out of Saigon, and everything that floated. There were barges being towed by LSTs, by waterborne logistic aircraft, and some coming on helicopters, which you've heard of. Some were really desperate. One of them, Major Wang Lai, landed an OV-1, was a FAC airplane, on the USS Midway. I don't know if you heard the story of him, but the guy was flying around for a long time over the ship. I got it. The story of the Midway was that they got all the helicopters. We had a vast armada of ships that were sitting off of Vung Tau in the Mekong River Delta, and they took all the ships, and one ship was classified as the attack ship, had combat airplanes on it. That was on an Enterprise. That was the ship I was on. All the other ships loaded up with Marines and helicopters to fly in to bring all the people out. Some of the pictures were probably, the famous one was the Huey sitting on top of the structure with a ladder up to it, right? So these guys had helicopters all over the place, Midway especially. And Larry Chambers was the skipper of the ship, and Major was flying around the ship, and finally came in and dropped a note on the ship, said, "I have my family with me, I have to land." So, and he told him it's like a half an hour or something like that. So Chambers decided, well, here's my Navy career, and he shoved all the helicopters in the water. And Major Bungley landed his airplane on the carrier. No tail hook. Yeah. He had his whole family with him. You mentioned the return of the troops. When we came back to Naval Air Station Alameda in California, in the Bay Area, we came under the Golden Gate Bridge. And the bridge was lined with people that thought they were welcoming us home. Instead, when the ship got underneath the bridge, they rained garbage down on us. So I reminded we were something once. We watched each other's back. We didn't have to explain ourselves. You just knew. Eventually, life moved on. The uniform went away, and things changed. Times changed. But now, every now and then, something small brings back that feeling. Not the past, no, just a sense of belonging. That's what this moment, this special day, remind me of, and I hope it does for you. As we leave here today, let us carry with us a renewed appreciation for the price of freedom and commitment by honoring our Vietnam veterans, not just today, but every day. May God bless our more than 58,000 fallen in that time, and our veterans now serving. God bless America. Thank you.
We have a certificate of appreciation from the VFW, the American Legion, and from Sergeant Major John Capt, being our guest speaker today. Okay? As the President of the Virginia Society of Sons of the Revolution, we would like to present to you our 250th anniversary talk.
So, sir, it's your story is amazing, and it's a great honor to be here and present you with the Sons of the American Revolution 250th commemoration coin. Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Okay. These are yours, I believe. Okay, could Chuck Loomis come forward? Lieutenant Colonel Charles Loomis, U.S. Air Force retired, and a member of the Leonard W. Kidd Memorial American Legion Post 2001, will read the names of veterans from Loudoun County killed during the Vietnam War. And they're listed here on the monument facing the road out here. And Gunnery Sergeant Mark Sink, Vietnam veteran, and Vice President of our chapter, will ring the bell after each name is read.
Thank you very much. It is my great honor to recall the names of those who passed away who were members of Loudoun County in the Vietnam War. Welby Herbert Grayson III, Private First Class, United States Marine Corps, killed on the 28th of August 1969, Da Nang, Vietnam. Richard B. Grigsby, Airman First Class, United States Air Force, killed on 25 August 1970, South Vietnam. Jack Harris, Jr., Private First Class, United States Marine Corps, killed on 16 September 69, Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam. David Franklin Helms, Specialist 4th, United States Army, killed on 8 June 1970 in Quang Tin Province, South Vietnam. Gregory Marshall Howard, Lance Corporal, United States Marine Corps, killed on 10 August 1966, Quang Tin Province, South Vietnam. Leonard Whitley Kidd, Specialist 5th United States Army, killed on 27 July 1970, Quang Tin Province, South Vietnam. Francis Everett Manuel, Master Sergeant, United States Army, killed in June 15, 1968 in South Vietnam. Waylon Franklin McCauley Jr., Private First Class, United States Army, killed on 12 September 1970, Quang Tin Province, South Vietnam. Ralph William Milborn, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, killed 19 August 1968 in Dinh Thuong Province, South Vietnam. Charles Edmund Peters, Private First Class, United States Army, killed 6 November 1966, South Vietnam. Richard Sharon Pohl, Colonel, United States Army, 1968, Tuy Tien Province, South Vietnam. David Allen Russell, Specialist 4th Class, United States Army, killed March 17, 1969, Cho Doc Province, South Vietnam. God rest their souls.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I would like to ask all Vietnam veterans in attendance to raise your hands. And please, there are pins over there on the table. If you have not taken one before, please do so now. We're glad to have you have them. We'd like to now conduct a rifle salute from VFW 1177, followed by taps. Please rise and give honors as that's done. Please be seated. Wreath presentations are a way that we honor those who served and who paid the ultimate sacrifice. As I call your name, please render honors to the monument listing the names of Loudoun County veterans lost during the Vietnam War, and then proceed to stand behind your wreath. Representing the Virginia Society Sons of the American Revolution, Darren Schmidt, President. Representing the Sergeant Major John Champ, Chapter of Virginia SAR, Martin Gainey. chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. Representing the Catoctin chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, Lori Falas, Regent. Representing Cameron Parish chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, Wendy Frederick, Regent. Representing DAR District 8 and the Lanes Mill chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, Anita Bonner, past Regent, Lanes Mill chapter and Treasurer District 8. Representing Mary Hemmings Bill chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, Ann Ballinger, President, Regent. And representing the Reverend John Mark Society Children of the American Revolution, Annabelle Frederick, Recording Secretary. Thank you, wreath presenters. I ask Chaplain Jim Watts to bring the benediction.
May God bless us all with a loving sense of His near presence, to guide us, to protect us, and to help us. And may we know what it is to walk close with Him all our lives. Amen.
Well, veterans and guests, this completes the program. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. And once again, thank you to the Vietnam veterans that are here, and welcome home.